D.B. Cooper was a criminal who was in 1971 hijacked a commercial plane traveling from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington. He later parachuted out of the aircraft with the ransom money. An extensive manhunt ensued, but the hijacker was never identified or caught, resulting in one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in U.S. history. I'm Jake Storielli. This is about D.B. Cooper on Laughs from the Past.
All right, welcome back to Laughs from the Past, Season 3, Episode 15, Historical Mysteries. This is the last episode of Season 3. This was the biggest historical mystery that I wanted to do once I thought of this theme. We've had some fun along the way, but this is one of my favorite stories in history. A hijacking, a mystery. D.B. Cooper is like gold for lore and legend and just a crazy criminal story. He's been in so many shows, Jake. I don't know. Like, that's how I know about him. Prison Break, they had a character in the jail who was D.B. Cooper. Justified on FX had a character who was D.B. Cooper. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, no one knows who he is. So he's always become like this Santa Claus of hijackings because it's just a fictional person. But there is a real guy who really did this. How much do you know about D.B. Cooper's story?
Again, I mean, honestly, not much. I mean, I've heard the airplane thing, and like you've said, it's almost more of a pop culture thing now. Like if you see if you see pieces of plastic in a tree, you'd be like, "Oh, is that D.B. Cooper's parachute?" And I don't know. It's just D.B. Cooper was a name I knew. It's like I guess
before you knew why you knew it.
Yes, and the way I was going to try to articulate that in a worse way but a better way is that, like, D.B. Cooper's a name you hear on Jeopardy, like your parents are playing and they get Jeopardy right, and someone says D.B. Cooper and that's the answer, and you just familiarize yourself with the name, but you still just don't know what it's about. Until one day you snap and you're like, okay, what is this?
Yeah. Into or Without a Paddle also used D.B. Cooper as a character.
Right.
Yeah. So now we're going to talk about it. You're going to know the full story.
Yes.
And we're going to do our best to find out who D.B. Cooper is. All right. On November 24th, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving, a nondescript man who appeared to be in his mid-40s and about 6 feet tall bought a $20 ticket for Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305. $20, huh? Sounds nice. He gave his name as Dan Cooper, which later turned out to be fake. Shortly after takeoff from Portland, he handed a note to a flight attendant in which he claimed to have a bomb in his briefcase. He then proceeded to open the attached case, which contained numerous wires, red sticks, and a battery. I don't think it was an actual bomb, but I don't know. Cooper.
Yeah, I feel like the way they said that, it's going to lead up to it saying it's not a bomb later. And I mean, yeah, I think if we're building up D.B. Cooper, who he's supposed to quote unquote be, you'd think this is not a real bomb.
Yeah. Cooper demanded 4 parachutes and $200,000 in $20 bills. That's worth $1.2 million in today's money. Decent amount of money. In $20 bills. After the flight landed in Seattle, Cooper released the 36 passengers when authorities provided the money and parachutes. So they land the plane at Seattle Airport. All the passengers get off. They hand him the money and the parachutes. He gets back on the plane. That always blew my mind.
Right.
I mean, I guess they really thought it was a real bomb. But why would
Yeah,
you
I
like
guess-
let a terrorist go back in the sky?
Yeah, and I mean, when this is all taking place, again, I mean, now we're reaching into movies for knowledge, but like when this plane is on the ground, we don't have anyone like climbing into the plane through like the wheel area or something like that.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much they could have done that they didn't. You're exactly
But
right. They could have had someone sneak on the plane.
bomb's a big one.
Yeah.
Bomb's a big threat. So I mean, I partially get it, but yeah.
So he gets back on the plane. After it refueled, he ordered the pilots to fly to Mexico City. Per his instructions, the plane flew under 10,000 feet at a speed slower than 200 knots. At around 8 p.m., while between Seattle and Reno, Nevada, widely believed to be near Ariel, Washington, Cooper lowered the rear steps and jumped. He then disappeared. The FBI launched what would become one of the longest and most exhaustive investigations in its history, known as NORJAC, Northwest Hijacking. Initially, the agency believed that Cooper knew both planes and the area, and it was speculated that he served in the military, possibly as a paratrooper. Later, however, it was decided that he was not an experienced skydiver because the jump was too dangerous, and he failed to notice that his reserve parachute was sewn shut for use in training. The agency reported that it looked at some 800 suspects in the first 5 years, with almost all being eliminated. Some were ruled out on the basis of DNA that was eventually recovered from the tie Cooper took off before jumping. One prime suspect was Richard Floyd Mccoy, who
obviously
the real McCoy, who was arrested for a similar crime several months later. However, he was eliminated as a suspect partly because he did not match the descriptions provided by 2 flight attendants. While serving his sentence, McCoy made a fake gun and escaped from prison, but was killed in a shootout with law enforcement. We're going to get more to like suspects later and McCoy.
okay.
Okay, what do you got on it now? What are your thoughts now?
Brain's kind of spinning, man. I've got a lot of big theories. Yeah, I mean Richard Floyd McCoy went full copycat. He's out for me. Jim, honestly, what's going on in my head right now that would make this, everyone loves that clip from The Office where Dwight talks about his perfect crime. I mean, that's a great scene. For this, it would be that when DB Cooper supposedly jumped out of the plane,
Yep.
where did that plane end up landing? You know what I'm saying?
I would guess the nearest airport.
Because it was supposed to be going towards Mexico City, right? But
Yeah.
the second he jumps off, you're like, okay, we're not going there.
Yeah.
I think in a perfect world, he pretends that someone jumps out and they fly the plane to Mexico City and he jumps out down there and he just starts his whole new life. Everyone always thought he was there, but I don't think that's an option. So I don't know.
Whoa. That's a theory I've read so many theories on DB Cooper, and I've never once read what your mind just came up with, and I kind of like it. Like, what if he just paid the pilots and flight attendants off with a share of the money and said, we're going to dump a fake parachute out of this plane. We're going to land in Mexico City. I'm just going to sneak off with you guys.
I mean, it can be foiled when we find out where the plane landed, because if it didn't get anywhere near Mexico City. But I mean, yeah, a dummy body theory isn't a theory?
I've never seen that, and I've done a lot of reading on this.
Well, case closed.
That's pretty cool. No, I think he definitely jumped. They found money where he jumped.
Right.
Like bags of torn money in the area. So many speculated that Cooper, who was outfitted in a business suit, trench coat, and loafers, did not survive. At that altitude, the winds were more than 200 miles per hour, and the parachute he used could not be steered. In addition, he would have landed in a rugged, heavily wooded area. After years of dead-end leads, investigators received a break in 1980 when a boy found a decaying package containing $5,800. It was buried along the Columbia River, north of Portland, and some 200 miles from Ariel. The serial numbers on the money, all of which were $20 bills, matched those of the ransom. However, following an extensive search, nothing further was discovered. Although the FBI continued to receive tips, in 2016, the agency officially closed its investigation, stating that its resources could be best used in other cases. I totally get that. Like, all right, let's just let this be. But that's cool that they found a bag of his money. Was he burying money to come back later? Did he drop a bag and it got buried over the years?
Yeah, that's buried's an interesting word there, right? Because, I mean, things can be naturally buried over time.
And it could just be like buried under branches and sticks. You have no idea what they mean by
Right.
buried. Yeah. But that would lead to that he jumped theory. Or maybe they put a bag in the fake parachute. Wow.
I don't know.
Wow. All right, there's some really cool facts. There's a lot of info. This might be a long-ish episode, but there's a lot of info here. Cooper appeared to be familiar with the Seattle area and may have been an Air Force veteran, based on testimony that he recognized the city of Tacoma from the air as the jet circled Puget Sound, and his accurate comment to Mccoy that McCord AFB was approximately 20 minutes driving time from Seattle to Tacoma Airport, a detail most civilians would not know or comment upon. What if, like, I don't know Tacoma, but if Tacoma has, like, a main building, wouldn't it be easy to be like, I've never seen Newtown, Connecticut from the sky, but if I saw the church tower next to the light post or, the two big tall buildings, I'd be like, that's Newtown. It doesn't make me a pilot.
No. Well, I'd like to see it behind the wheel, but yeah, I don't know. This isn't doing much for me.
Yeah, a lot of times these investigators, and I have a big problem with these investigators coming up later. It's like they're just like so easy to be like, well, why are you sinking your teeth into that? Because it can so easily just be this, which denies that. All right. His financial situation was very likely desperate. According to the FBI's retired chief investigator, extortionists and other criminals who steal large amounts of money nearly always do so because they need it urgently.
Hot take.
That's investigating.
Hot take only.
Otherwise, the crime is not worth the considerable risk. I can't believe someone wrote that down in ink, like as if no one knew that.
Yep.
Alternatively, Cooper may have been a thrill seeker who made the jump just to prove it could be done.
Sure.
Agents theorize that Cooper took his alias from a popular Belgium comic book series of the 1970s featuring the fictional hero Dan Cooper, a Royal Canadian Air Force test pilot who took part in numerous heroic adventures, including parachuting. Now that I'm all in on. He definitely stole his name from that cartoon.
Yes.
So he said his name was Dan Cooper, but they misheard him, and it just became DB Cooper, like over the retelling. DB Cooper's cooler than Dan Cooper.
Oh, yeah.
But he said Dan Cooper. On the cover of the series, it depicts test pilot Cooper skydiving in full paratrooper gear. Because the Dan Cooper comics were never translated into English nor imported to the U.S., they speculated that he may have encountered them during a tour of duty in Europe. The Cooper research team...
That's the first, fun theory we've come across.
Yes, that's the first one that I'm like, ooh, I like this. Okay.
Yeah, that's a nice little twist, yeah.
The Cooper research team suggested the alternative, possibly, that Cooper was Canadian and found the comics in Canada, which they were also sold.
So yeah, could have been in the war, fighting the fight, paratrooping, or he could just be a Canadian.
Those are still, I think, good things though. Like you can
we've got some leads.
They noted his specific demand for negotiable American currency, a phrase seldom, if ever, used by American citizens. Since witnesses stated that Cooper had no distinguishable accent, Canada would be his most likely country of origin if he were not a U.S. citizen. So he asked for negotiable American currency? Yeah, I don't know what that term means. That's a term in Canada, I guess?
Yeah, that's odd. I almost still don't know what that means.
I guess we got to call up a Canadian and say, like, why would you refer to currency as negotiable?
Negotiable American currency. I mean, I know what American currency is.
It says negotiable monetary instruments that must be reported by travelers or persons sending or receiving them.
Does that help clear it up?
Not really.
No.
Okay, here we go. Hold on. Cooper's use of his unusual phrase has led to speculation about his origins, including as to whether he was perhaps not an American. So I don't know if this is a phrase somewhere else, but I think American detectives were like, who the fuck says that?
Yeah, this is something that, like, when I assume when we get to the end of this, we're going to be wondering what was extremely planned out and what wasn't extremely planned out. And this just seems like an oddity. Like, this, right now in my head, this is like he has a realization he's doing it. He's almost about to pee his pants, and he just says the words negotiable American currency.
Yeah.
And now they're wondering, do we latch on to that, or was that just weird?
It could be as simple as one teacher or professor in his youth used that term. So now he uses that term. Yeah. Evidence suggested that Cooper was knowledgeable about technique, aircraft, and the terrain. He demanded 4 parachutes to force the assumption that he might compel one or more hostages. Am I saying that wrong?
Hostages?
I said it right. Okay. To jump with him, thus ensuring he would not be deliberately supplied with sabotaged equipment. Love that.
That's actually really smart. Like, I would not, if I was planning this would not have come up in my planning.
Mm-hmm. I guess the question is, you think, how do I know they're going to give me a real parachute? Well, let's make them think civilians are going to use it as well.
Right.
That's cool. According to a research team, Cooper's meticulous planning may also have extended to the timing of his operation and even his choice of attire. The FBI searched but couldn't find anyone who disappeared that weekend, suggesting that the perpetrator may have returned to his normal occupation. If you were planning on going back to work on Monday, then you would need as much time as possible to get out of the woods, find transportation, and get home. The very best time for this is in front of a 4-day weekend, which is the timing Dan Cooper chose for his crime. Furthermore, if he was planning ahead, he knew that he had to hitchhike out of the woods, and it is much easier to get picked up in a suit and tie than in old blue jeans. I like all that info, too.
Yeah, that's pretty good, right? I mean, and again, I think we're going to end up looping around on a lot of this, but that's really fun, right? That this guy just, man, I could use a little coin. You know what? I know how to parachute a little bit. I'm just going to hijack a plane. I'll get some money. I'll jump out, hitchhike home. Some stoner in the upper Northwest will pick me up and not ask what's in my briefcase, drop me off. No one will know who that is, and then I'll just go on and live my life.
Yeah. This was a planned thing. I don't have the info here, but I know that he also wore like a toupee. And
sure.
I think there was someone who wrote a letter to the FBI saying, like, you'll never catch me. I wore like a prosthetic nose and a toupee. You don't even know what I look like, which is
nice.
Who knows if they actually, if that was actually him who wrote it. But if it was, that's such a badass letter to write.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit badass. Well,
no, you don't even know what I look like.
I mean, it could also be like a scared thing. Like that could also mean that could also be a situation where it's like you're getting close.
Yeah.
Like Leo and Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah. Stop looking. You're not close because
right.
you're very close.
Exactly.
Okay, I hear you. Here's where I get frustrated. The FBI were more skeptical, concluding that Cooper lacked crucial skydiving skills and experience. We originally thought Cooper was an experienced jumper, perhaps even a paratrooper. But then we concluded after a few years that was simply not true. A Boeing 727 at flaps 15 degrees and lightweight probably flies at 150 knots or 172 miles per hour. No experienced parachutist would have jumped in the pitch black night in the rain with a 172 mile per hour wind in his face wearing loafers and a trench coat. It was simply too risky. He also missed that his reserve parachute was only for training and had been sewn shut, something a skilled skydiver would have checked. He also failed to bring or request a helmet. Chose to jump with the older and technically inferior of the two primary parachutes supplied to him, and jumped into a probable 15 degrees Fahrenheit wind at 10,000 feet in November over Washington State without proper protection against the extreme wind chill.
This is just the FBI being soft.
This is the FBI refusing to admit that D.B. Cooper is smarter than them.
All right, show us the body then if he died.
That's what they say. They say, obviously he died. Like, where's the body? This is the FBI refusing to admit that D.B. Cooper is smarter than them. He's smarter than you. He escaped. He asked for 4 parachutes. He did this on a 4-day weekend. He had this all planned out. You send him 4 different parachutes. He checks them. He says, I'll take the lesser to throw them off my skill as a paratrooper. Wouldn't a guy who risks this jump be very trained parachuter? Like, wouldn't he be so confident in his skills that he can make this jump?
Like, that's the part that's obnoxious about this. Like, clearly many parts of this have to be premeditated. When it says when he gets on the plane and he tells them to fly slower than 200 knots, under 10,000 feet, like, he clearly, you have to have so much of this planned. Like, even the 4 parachutes thing I just said, like, if I was to come up with a plan in 5 minutes, like, I would have missed that one. Like, this was clearly planned out. To think that he went into this plan with all of this planned out, but, you know, he had a less than 1% chance on the skydive. I mean, that's being idiots.
Yeah, I agree. That paragraph pisses me off because the FBI is like, yeah, he was dumb. No, he's smarter than you.
No, because show me him. Yeah. Otherwise, you're dumb.
Like, he jumped. The reserve was sewn shut. No parachuter would use that. What about a parachuter who just hijacked an airplane and is risking his entire life to steal money? Would he maybe jump without the reserve? Think so.
Yeah.
You dumb dummies. So anyway, yeah, the FBI speculated that he did not survive the jump. Diving into the wilderness without a plan, without right equipment, in such terrible conditions, he probably never even got a chute open. Shut the fuck up, FBI.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they suck.
Like, the helmet part is so dumb.
What's he supposed to do? Bring a helmet onto the plane? Sir, why are you bringing that helmet on the plane?
They're saying he should have requested it with the parachutes, and it's like, honestly, if this guy's going to make or not make the jump, the helmet's not going to be the difference.
Imagine if it was. Just hit one tree branch wrong on, like, the way down.
Everything was perfect. Just clipped his head.
All right, are you ready to get into the suspects? That's the crime.
Yeah.
FBI basically gave up. We have so many suspects here, Jake. I'm going to run through them because some are really funny, and then some may be D.B. Cooper.
Right.
All right. First dude, Kenneth Christensen. In 2003, a Minnesota resident named Lyle Christensen watched a television documentary about the Cooper hijacking and became convinced that his late brother Kenneth was Cooper. After repeated futile attempts to convince the FBI and then the author and film director Nora Ephraim, he contacted a private investigator in New York City. In 2010, the detective published a book postulating that Christian was the hijacker. The following year, an episode of the history series Brad Meltzer's Decoded also summarizes circumstances. Christensen enlisted in the Army in 1944 and was trained as a paratrooper. The war had ended by the time he was deployed in 1945, but he made occasional training jumps while stationed in Japan with occupation forces in the late 40s. After leaving the Army, he joined the Northwest Orient in 1954 as a mechanic in the South Pacific and subsequently became a flight attendant and then a purser based in Seattle. So a lot of that stuff's like, okay.
Yeah.
That all sounds good to me. Christensen was 45 years old at the time of the hijacking, but he was shorter, 5'8", and thinner and lighter complected than eyewitness descriptions. Don't care about eyewitness descriptions.
Yeah.
You can easily wear boots and make yourself taller. Right? Like, I mean, he wore a toupee. Why wouldn't he change his height?
Couple big insoles in your shoes?
Yeah. Christensen smoked, as did the hijacker, and displayed a particular fondness for bourbon. He was also left-handed, as evidence photos of Cooper's black tie show the clip applied from the left side, suggesting a left-hand wearer. Shafter told a reporter that photos of Christensen fit her memory on the hijacker's appearance and more closely than those of other suspects. She had been shown, but could not conclusively identify her.
Whoa.
Christensen reportedly purchased a house with cash a few months after the hijacking. That's big. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
While dying of cancer in 1994, he told Lyle, "There is something you should know, but I cannot tell you." Lyle said he never pressed his brother to explain. What, Lyle? Lyle. Come on. After Christensen's death, family members discovered gold coins and a valuable stamp collection, along with over $200,000 in bank accounts. They also found a folder in Northwest Orient news clippings, which began about the time he was hired in the 1950s and stopped just prior to the date of the hijacking. Despite the fact that the hijacking was by far the most monumentous news event in the airline's history, Christensen continued to work part-time for the airline for many years after 1971, but apparently never clipped another Northwest news story.
You're not going to like this next part.
Research by internet web sleuths would later uncover proof that Christensen did not pay cash for the house he bought after the hijacking, but instead had a mortgage on the house and took 17 years to pay it off. The same search would also uncover proof that Christensen had sold off almost 24 acres of land for $17,000 per acre in the mid-90s, thus accounting for a large sum of money in his bank account at the time of his death. Despite the publicity generated by Porteous' book and the 2011 television documentary, the FBI is standing by its position that Christensen cannot be considered a prime suspect. It cites a poor match to eyewitnesses' physical descriptions, a level of skydiving expertise above the predicted. Oh my God, a level of skydiving expertise above that predicted by their suspect profile. The web sleuths are doing a better job to make this guy not sound like DB Cooper than the FBI.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the most important point, right? I mean, Lyle Christensen is here years later trying to depict his brother as DB Cooper after his death, and I mean, we've got some good stuff here. But so we're not affected by the height or weight stuff, right?
No,
because that can be so easily fabricated.
And that's what the FBI is going on. A dude, they're so stupid in this case, but yes, I don't care. I'm 5'7", with boots on, I'm 5'9". If I wanted to become 6 foot for one stroll through an airport, I could find a way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a lot of good here. The fact that this dude worked for the airline and the newspaper clippings.
Yeah, and the purser thing was kind of big, Jim. We went past that, but I guess it's the person in charge of the money on And so maybe there's a connection to how he would be able to get the money on the plane. Maybe there was some knowledge there that he somehow found out. I mean, I like it, but I mean, it felt like the points they were trying to drive it home with, like, well, he bought his house with cash, and then it was like, no, he didn't.
But here's my thing. It would be dumb if the real Dan Cooper just went and bought a house with cash.
Right.
So the fact that he bought a house very close after the hijacking is still, like, say you take out the cash part and you just say, all right, this dude was a paratrooper. He worked for the airline. He had the newspaper clippings. He bought a house right after the airline. I don't care how he paid for it. It's still kind of like, ooh.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a no, but I guess here's what's getting to me. I feel like there's going to be a lot of guys who should be, like, when they originally looked at candidates, they started off with, like, military with skydiving experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, those aren't huge hints. I mean, working at the airline, that is a big thing, kind of the inside man thing there. I don't know. I'm not sold. I'm not saying no, but I'm not saying yes either.
He looks a lot like the drawing. Why is the FBI saying he doesn't look like the drawing? I'm sending you the picture right now.
Sure.
If you scroll a little bit down on this, you'll see the composite drawing, sunglasses on, sunglasses off, and then Kenneth Christensen in his flight attendant. I mean, we have a lot more suspects to talk about, but I'm pretty on that this guy very likely could be DB Cooper.
Yeah, right?
Do you see the pictures I'm showing you?
Yeah, I mean, it looks similar.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's go on there because some of these are funny. Next guy is Jack Coffelt. Coffelt was a con man, ex-convict, and purported government informant who claimed to have been the chauffeur and confidant of Abraham Lincoln's last undisputed descendant, great-grandson Robert Todd Lincoln. In 1972, he began claiming he was Cooper and attempted through an intermediary, a former cellmate named James Brown, to sell his story to Hollywood production company. He said he landed near Mount Hood, about 50 miles southwest, injuring himself and losing the ransom money in the process. Photos of Coffelt bear a resemblance to the composite drawings, although he was in his late mid-50s in 71. He was reportedly in Portland on the day of the hijacking and sustained leg injuries around that time, which were consistent with a skydiving mishap. Coffelt's account was reviewed by the FBI, which concluded that it was differed in significant details from information that had not been made public and was therefore a fabrication. So, this dude's claim to fame was that he drove Abraham Lincoln's great-grandson around, and then people probably got super bored with that. Like, I don't care, man. So he had to find a new claim to fame.
This guy never had a chance. DB Cooper would never peacock about being DB Cooper.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, this guy's out.
Anyone that outs themselves, I'm almost, no, you're not him. DB Cooper would never do that. Next up is Lynn Doyle Cooper, which I'm already out on because why would you use your own name? But we'll get into it. L.D. Cooper, a leather worker and Korean War veteran, was proposed as a suspect in July 2011 by his niece, Marla Cooper.
What's with all these family members coming out, man?
If you think one of your older relatives could potentially be, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's a little exciting, a little rat, man.
Well, they're dead already. No one's ratted on a live person, I don't think.
All right.
As an 8-year-old, she recalled Cooper and another uncle planning something very mischievous involving the use of expensive walkie-talkies at her grandmother's house in Sisters, Oregon. The next day, Flight 305 was hijacked, and though the uncles ostensibly were turkey hunting, L.D. Cooper came home wearing a bloody shirt, the result, he said, of an auto accident. Later, she said her parents came to believe that L.D. Cooper was the hijacker. She also recalled that her uncle, who died in 1999, was obsessed with the Canadian comic book hero Dan Cooper and had one of his comic books thumbtacked to his wall, although he was not a skydiver or paratrooper. I like the comic book, but this dude can also really like the comic book because his last name is Cooper.
So, Jim, I get this is what I was trying to say before, and this helps me depict it better. Like, so the whole intro, like, we basically made like a checkbox list of what could be linked to DB Cooper. There was the comic book. You'd like to think there's some skydiving experience to actually do this. Like, okay, this person has the last name Cooper, and they have a connection to the comic book. So, like, yeah, they have to be a suspect, but I don't know. I think that's it, and everything else is just a giant reach.
Yeah, there's stuff here. There's stuff here, but there's not a lot because this guy doesn't have any skydiving or paratrooper experience, and I think you have to have that. DB Cooper had to have that. I don't think it was just a dude who just jumped for the first time.
Where's DB Cooper's tie?
They have DB Cooper's tie. He took it off before jumping, which is kind of a badass move. Just didn't want to flap it in his face. And so they match this LD Cooper's DNA to the DNA on the tie, which they admit they have no idea if that DNA on the tie is a flight attendant or actually DB Cooper's, but they're still just matching it, which, yeah, waste of resources and money, the FBI. You're being dumb. The FBI just made no comment, like saying that dude had wavy hair. DB Cooper didn't have wavy hair. Toupees exist. So I don't know. This one doesn't do as much for me as the Christensen one, the guy who worked at the airport and was a paratrooper.
Right.
And who looks like DB Cooper. Next up, Barbara Dayton. You're going to like this one, Jake.
Okay.
Barbara Dayton, a recreational pilot and University of Washington librarian who was born Robert Dayton in 1926, served in the U.S. Merchant Marine and then the Army during World War II. After discharge, Dayton worked with explosives in the construction industry and aspired to a professional airline career, but could not obtain a commercial pilot's license. Dayton underwent gender reassignment surgery in 1969 and changed her name to Barbara. She claimed to have staged the Cooper hijacking 2 years later, disguised as a man, in order to get back at the airline industry and the FAA, whose insurmountable rules and conditions had prevented her from becoming an airline pilot. She said she hid the ransom money in a cistern near her landing point in Woodburn, a suburban area south of Portland. Eventually, she recanted her entire story, ostensibly after learning that she could still be charged with the hijacking. Oh, you can still put me in jail? Never mind. I made it up.
Oh wait, I can't just brag about this that I did this cool thing. You're gonna make me in trouble. Then I didn't do it.
Come on, it was years ago. I was a whole nother gender back then. What the fuck?
Barb.
Like we said, anyone who says I'm DB Cooper, they're not DB Cooper.
Right.
Next up is William Gossett. William Gossett was a Marine Corps, Army, and Army Air Forces veteran who saw action in Korea and Vietnam. His military experience included advanced jump training and wilderness survival. After retiring from the military service in 1973, he worked as an ROTC instructor, taught military law at Weber State University, and hosted a radio talk show in Salt Lake City, which featured discussions about the paranormal. Gossett was widely known to be obsessed with the Cooper hijacking. He amassed a voluminous collection of Cooper-related news articles and told one of his wives that he knew enough about the case to write the epitaph for DB Cooper. Late in his life, he reportedly told 3 of his sons, a retired Utah judge, and a friend in Salt Lake City Public Defender's Office that he had committed the hijacking. Photos of Gossett taken in 1971 bear a close resemblance to the most widely circulated Cooper composite drawings. So this dude's like on his deathbed admitting to it. Are we allowing that?
To a degree, like that could be a play. I don't know. I mean, this just seems like this was a dude that was into the D.B. Cooper case, and then he got old and started to lose his mind a little bit, and then he was like, yeah, I'm D.B. Cooper. Boom.
This dude's son, Gossett's son, said he was always... He was a compulsive gambler who was always strapped for cash, and it showed him wads of cash just before Christmas 1971, weeks after the hijacking. He speculated that Gossett gambled the money away in Las Vegas. That would be sucky.
Yeah, see, that doesn't add up. You don't rob $200K to gamble it away.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
You don't just, and if you do, you don't just call it a weekend. Like, then you would rob the next plane.
Imagine if you did, like, you're just, hey, yeah, just rob that plane, spent the money, and then you go back to your life as a radio host.
Like, it's not like you live a regular life at that point. Then you would go and rob another plane or something.
In 1988, Gossett changed his name to Wolfgang.
Right.
And became a Roman Catholic priest, which Cook and others interpreted as an effort to disguise his identity. Wow. What the hell is this? Listen to this part. Other circumstantial evidence includes testimony that Cook claims to have obtained from William Mitchell, a passenger on the hijacked aircraft, regarding a mysterious physical detail which he will not divulge, common to the hijacker and Gossett. What does that mean? They got a big dick or something?
I mean, that's kind of the only thing it's hinting towards, or like, I don't even know. Like missing a chunk of his ear or something? Yeah.
No, because that would be, it's got to be like I could see through his pants, he had a John Hamm big dick. I don't even get it. Why would you not divulge the physical detail that's...
Yeah, I mean, this is all void.
Yeah. Cook also claims to have found possible links to Gossett in each of 4 letters signed by D.B. Cooper and mailed to 3 newspapers within days of the hijacking, although there is no evidence that the actual hijacker created or mailed any of the letters. Okay. The FBI's basically said, like, nah.
The FBI's official statement for this cat is there's not one link to the D.B. Cooper case. This was just an old guy that was into it, clearly went crazy towards the end of his days. And when I say clearly, I mean he changed his name to Wolfgang.
Badass name.
Strong name, but no, this guy's not D.B. Cooper.
Next up, Robert Richard Lepsy.
Okay.
Lepsy was a 33-year-old grocery store manager and married father of 4 from Grayling, Michigan, who disappeared in October 1969. His vehicle was found 3 days later at a local airport, and a man matching Lepsy's description was reportedly seen boarding a flight to Mexico. Authorities concluded that Lepsy had left voluntarily and closed their investigation. 2 years after the Cooper hijacking, family members noted that Lepsy's physical features resembled those in the Cooper composite drawings and asserted that Cooper's clothing was described as very similar to Lepsy's grocery store uniform. Back when you had to wear a suit and tie to bag groceries.
Yeah.
Lepsy was declared legally dead in 1976. One of Lepsy's daughters submitted a DNA sample to the FBI in 2011 with unknown results. Great. Although Lepsy was proposed as a Cooper suspect in 2014 book, there's no record of public comment from the FBI. This is a dude who just escaped his family because he hated them.
Yeah, seems like this guy hated his life and went to Mexico. I'll say this. I mean, I've got this guy higher on the list than the past couple because at least there's some mystery fill in the blanks there that you could fill in with better stuff than changing your name to Wolfgang.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, he changed his name to Wolfgang, became a priest. Must have been D.B. Cooper.
Yeah, totally D.B. Cooper. We're the FBI, and he has zero connection to the case.
Your dad
just a fan.
Your dad was a loon.
Your dad was a fan of the D.B. Cooper case who had a gambling problem. Next question.
Next up, John List. List was an accountant, World War II and Korean veteran who murdered his wife, 3 teenage children, and an 85-year-old mother in Westfield, New Jersey. 15 days before the Cooper hijack, he withdrew $200,000 from his mother's bank account and disappeared. He came to the attention of the Cooper task force due to the timing of his disappearance, multiple matches to the hijacker's description, and the reasoning that a fugitive accused of mass murder has nothing to lose. After his capture in 1989, List admitted to murdering his family, but denied any involvement in the Cooper hijacking.
Again, like these are the boxes I was mentioning earlier. Like, okay, this guy was a war veteran who had nothing to lose, so he's a candidate, but he's not.
Well, but I can understand at the time of investigation, the FBI saying, let's check in on this guy.
Yeah, you bring him in, but no.
They didn't catch him for a while. And then they brought him in and they're like, all right, you murdered your family and you are DB Cooper. And he's like, what?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you guys. Like, I murdered my family, but I'm not DB Cooper. Don't give me that kind of credit.
Yeah, that guy was cool.
Yeah.
I couldn't
I
pull
just
that
murdered
off.
my family.
Yeah, I just murdered my family. That's all. Next up, Ted Mayfield. Theodore E. Mayfield was a Special Forces veteran, pilot, competitive skydiver, and skydiving instructor who served time in 1994 for negligent homicide after 2 of his students died when their parachutes failed to open. Yikes. Later, he was found indirectly responsible for 13 additional skydiving deaths due to faulty equipment and training. Oh my God, this makes me never want to skydive.
Yeah.
His criminal record also included armed robbery and transportation of stolen aircraft. This dude's matching up decently right now, Jake.
Sure.
In 2010, he was sentenced to 3 years probation for piloting a plane 26 years after losing his pilot's license and rigging certificates. He was suggested repeatedly as a suspect early in the investigation, according to FBI, an FBI agent who knew Mayfield from a prior dispute at a local airport. He was ruled out based partly on the fact that he called the FBI agent less than 2 hours after Flight 305 landed in Reno to volunteer advice on standard skydiving practices and possible landing zones. But isn't that what criminals sometimes do?
Right? Like, isn't that him? Wouldn't that be Ted Mayfield making his own alibi there?
And checking in on what the FBI has.
Right.
In 2006, 2 amateur researchers named Daniel Dvorak and Matthew Myers proposed Mayfield as a suspect once again, asserting that they had assembled a convincing circumstantial case. They theorized that Mayfield called the FBI agent not to offer advice, but to establish an alibi, and they challenged the FBI's conclusion that Mayfield could not possibly have a phone in time to call the FBI less than 4 hours after jumping into the wilderness at night. That's good. That's smart.
Yeah.
Mayfield denied any involvement and repeated a previous assertion that the FBI called him 5 times while the hijacking was still in progress to ask about parachutes, local skydivers, and skydiving techniques. Mayfield further charged that the 2 writers paid him to play along with the theory so they would all make a lot of money. So,
yeah.
All right, Jake.
So there's that.
There's one more.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a bunch more, but I don't know how many more I can do. But we have the real McCoy here.
Right.
McCoy was an Army veteran who served 2 tours of duty in Vietnam, first as a demolition expert and later with the Green Berets as a helicopter pilot. This dude did the same thing. He did a copycat hijacking. He boarded a United Airlines flight in Denver, Colorado, brandishing what later proved to be a paperweight resembling a hand grenade and unloaded handgun. He demanded $500,000, and after delivery of the money and parachutes at San Francisco International Airport, McCoy ordered the aircraft back into the sky and bailed out over Provo, Utah, leaving behind his handwritten hijacking instructions and his fingerprints on a magazine he had been reading. A handwriting expert compared the note found on the plane with McCoy's writing on military service records and determined that McCoy had written the note. He was arrested on April 9th. So he survived the jump.
So he did this.
He did it. He survived the jump, had the money, was arrested 2 days later. After trial and conviction, received a 45-year sentence. 2 years later, he escaped from the penitentiary with several accomplices by crashing a garbage truck through a main gate. He was tracked down 3 months later in Virginia Beach and killed with a shootout with the FBI.
Whoa.
And then a book was written about him called The Real McCoy, where they say that he was actually D.B. Cooper.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You have a possibility there that it's either, full copycat because we have the playbook, or he's the real guy.
The FBI does not consider him a suspect in the Cooper case because of significant mismatches in age and description, a level of skydiving skill well above that thought to be possessed by the hijacker. I'm so mad at them. Get over it, FBI. He was a good skydiver.
Like maybe, yeah, clearly, like maybe that was part of it to throw you idiots off even more.
It's working if it was. Because this guy, the FBI keeps ruling people out like, nah, this guy's too good of a skydiver, not our guy. And it's like, well, you don't know if you're right.
Yeah,
there.
let's take off that limit and see who's a candidate again.
Yeah. I like the McCoy and I like Christensen. Those are my two leading candidates.
My worry about McCoy, Jim, is aren't you a big fan of... Do you believe that the letters written were by D.B. Cooper later? Because wouldn't that rule this guy out? Because he dies.
Yeah, he did die. Yeah, I don't know about those letters. Who knows? That could be anyone.
Right.
There's a lot of people that wanted to be D.B. Cooper.
Right.
There's a couple others. You want to go into them or no? There's Robert Rackstraw, which is a cool name. He reemerged as a suspect in a History Channel program. Look at this. The suit alleges the FBI suspended active investigation of the Cooper case in order to undermine the theory that Rackshaw is D.B. Cooper so as to prevent embarrassment for the borough's failure to develop evidence sufficient to prosecute him for a crime. FBI, you got embarrassed through this whole thing.
Continuously.
Yeah. There's a couple others. This old guy looks good. William J. Smith.
I think that's the most fun part of this is that I keep mentioning the boxes that need to be checked. One of the main boxes that needs to be checked is some big old ears.
Yeah.
All of these peckerheads have nice big old ears.
Yeah. Maybe that's the thing that they wouldn't divulge. No, I was talking about his big ears, not his big dick.
And what if, and again, I mean, we could go in circles around this all day, but like, I don't know, are fake ears a thing? Could my dude have put on fake big old ears?
Yeah,
to
of
make,
course.
like, I don't know. Whoever did this had skydiving experience.
Yeah, no doubt. And they were a good skydiver.
Like, the FBI is so dumb for ignoring that.
All right, so those are some suspects. No one will ever know, I don't think. A lot of people like to think that Christensen is the guy. That's like the newest, most popular theory. He does look a lot like him. And his background matches perfectly. Working as a purser for the airline, flight attendant for the airline, paratrooper, skydiver, lived in the area, bought a house right after the jump happened. If you were to force me to choose one of the suspects, that's who I'm choosing.
Yeah, Kenneth Christensen seems like the number one. I mean, it's just...
And it's also, Jake, I weirdly enough, or maybe it's not weird, I'm on D.B. Cooper's side. Like, I'm rooting for him to have made off with the money, lived a good life.
He beat the system.
I'd love for him to beat the system. Well, a lot of the other guys are bad guys, like the murderer, the real McCoy got in a shootout. You know what I mean? Like, I want my D.B. Cooper, the fictionalized version. He's a genius who won.
Yeah, I mean, I'm stuck between that, but dude, even if you've won the great game and you're at this point, you tell someone.
Well, he tried to tell his brother, Christensen, He's like, I got something I need to tell you. And
instead of saying that sentence, there's something you should know, but I cannot tell you, you just say, I'm D.B. Cooper.
I banged your wife, Lyle.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
sorry about it.
Wouldn't that be funny? Lyle's trying to make him out to be one of the coolest guys ever. No, he actually, your kids are actually my kids. I don't know. The other part for me, Jim, is it's either that or it's the guy who just makes a weekend out of it. He's like, man, I really need some coin. This long weekend will have me out of work. It's Thanksgiving. I'll just rob this, get it over with, live a good life. And that was it. Like, that would be a DB Cooper move.
That would be a DB Cooper move.
Like, yeah, I kind of like my job at the grocery store. I just really could use $200,000. So I'll just do this and then done.
Do you like the DB Cooper story as much as I do?
Oh, yeah.
I can't believe this is real. You know what I mean? Like, this really happened, and it's something that no one's ever going to figure out, and this guy got away with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's an all-timer.
Yeah, I'm excited. If you have any theories, if you know DB Cooper, send them our way. This ends Season 3 of Laughs from the Past, Historical Mysteries. I was going to do... I have a bunch of things I want to do coming up. And I've talked to Jake about them. We want to do... I don't even want to say it because then I will say it because then it will force me to do it. But it's going to be down the road. I want to do D-Day. I want to do... What did I say? Lewis and Clark stories
Lewis
along...
and Clark, like, along the actual tale.
Yeah,
like
in the way Season 2 was of the
Timeline.
Civil War, where it was like really in-depth, like researched, and we do like a season of one story where we tell the whole story throughout a season. I want to do more of those, but with baseball season going on and Talking Yanks being the main thing Jake and I do, I don't have time, so I got to wait for the off season to really dive into more of those. But I found a book that I bought for myself a while ago. I just found it all about kids who made history in the U.S. Children. And I think that's going to be Season 4. It's called We Were There Too, Young People in U.S. History. Then I'm going to find some really cool stories about that. And we're going to talk about kids changing the course of history, Jake. Season 4, kids.
There it is.
And then we'll do some more stuff there. So thank you. If you enjoyed the mysteries, I think some of the mystery stuff was awesome. Like Huey Long, the kidnapping, Lindbergh kidnapping. There's a lot of really good episodes this season.
I mean, yeah, Lindbergh baby's a famous one.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good ones. So thank you guys for listening along. Go tell your friends to binge them. Go tell your friends to listen and binge and rate and review and subscribe if you enjoyed all that. We appreciate it. We'll be back next Tuesday with our first Kids in History, Season 4. Thanks, guys. See ya.